All right, welcome to another episode of Badass Clinician Podcast with your host Natty and Chestin. Chestin, how you doing,
Good,
man?
good. Trying to survive this summer
Oh,
heat here in the Carolinas.
dude, it's hot everywhere. It's hot in
Yeah.
Jersey. I've been outside like every single day. I'm working, protecting my skin, working on my good skin routine. Um, it's great because now I have tons of like younger athletes, especially females. Like, oh, what's your skin routine? I was like, sunscreen and a hat.
uh,
So speaking of power brand, that's what I'm trying to
yeah,
be.
man.
Is be extremely athletic, but also aging
Yeah, absolutely,
gracefully.
man. Look, you have to. I mean, especially in the healthcare space. Like, I hate to say it, but people judge a book by its cover, and so if you don't look the part, you lose credibility instantly. So it doesn't matter what it is: fitness, diet, skincare. You want to make sure that when people see you, when they see your face, they associate you with good health all around.
Well, I mean, you are a walking billboard to your business,
Absolutely.
so that's what it is. I mean, let's get started into the podcast a little bit. So, what's cool? We kind of talk off camera about this. Was my experience this week was that we obviously just had our little uh, inner circle meeting with like all the other CEOs that I'm
Hmm.
friend with, and we hire a coach. We hire a story brand coach to talk about how to really craft the right message that appeal in the ideal population that
Yep.
you want to serve. And that was really cool because it's kind of take magnetic marketing to like the next level, right? Because magnetic marketing with Dan is like, hey, grab a message where people get to raise their hand and say, hey, you can help me. But with story brand, they go deeper into that. And when I say deep, it's like really deep. We spend 4 hours just like crafting, understanding like all the nuances of what's going inside that person's head, what they're exactly saying to themselves. And if you can articulate that through writing, through content, through like little headlines and stuff, that actually get people attention because you are affirming what they are
Yeah.
saying,
Yep.
right? The best way I can describe it is like you would go out to dinner with like a friend and like you say something and then the best response they say is like, dude, I was thinking
Yep.
the same thing.
Yep.
Like,
It,
so
it goes
in
back to,
my
like you said,
head,
Dan
when I'm,
Kennedy. Dan Kennedy talks all the time about continuing the conversation they're already having in their head. So
mhm,
you want to inject
yeah.
yourself in that conversation that they're having and just further it, enhance it. Showcase your expertise and how you can help in that regard.
Now, when you're busy running a clinic, that's the last thing you get to focus on is you don't have
Yep.
time to think, right? Which is a double-edged sword. You need to use your time to work to generate revenue, but then you also need that time to get creative to understand, the psychographic of the people who you're trying
Yeah,
to
and
help,
that goes back to
right?
the whole staircase that we've articulated before is as you move up that staircase and you have people in those in the day to day kind of doing those things, meeting with people, talking to people, servicing patients, et cetera, et cetera. Hopefully, you have the process in place that allow you to ascend up and focus on those higher value activities. And this exactly
Mm-hmm.
is what those higher value activities are: is thinking and strategizing and coming up with language and things that you can say or do to help further your mission. But in order to get there, you've got to have those pieces in place at the lower levels, so to speak. In those, I say lower value tasks, but in those like day to day things, like you need to have people in those places that to give you that time and that freedom to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I want to walk through this story brand framework. If you're
Yeah,
okay with
please.
that today, I think that would be a huge help for everybody. So the way they structure it, the premise of the story brand is started out with a guy who's a screenwriter that write like a bunch of things for movies and all of that stuff. And then what he realizes that like, whoa, this whole kind of framework fit in every marketing message, right? Because people remember story or they remember like punchline stuff that you say. So that's how the whole brand start getting involved. So the framework is all start with a character,
Yep.
right? A character is the person who you want to serve, right? And the one question they ask is, what do they
Yep.
want, right? And it just go, hey, if you were this character, what is it that they want, right? And for me, what the obviously the population that we've been helping with is athletic population. But what we're trying to do now is trying to help the parents of those athletes, because they put themselves kind of in the back seat rather than in the driver's seat. So it was a really cool exercise for me to get into. Like, hey, if I were a parent of this athlete, what is it that they want, right? Clearly, they want healthy kids. They want the kids to be able to pursue their dream. They want to give them resources that they didn't have when they were a kid to the kids, right? But then what they forgot to think about was, what is it that they want themselves? What is it that they want for them? So we start diving down, and like some of the things that we mentioned is that they want to feel young again. That's a big thing. They want to be able to keep up with their kids. They want to be able to, handle, obstacles that life throw at them. And I think the biggest thing is they want to be able to get out of bed and just start attacking the day. They don't want to slow down, right? Because where they are at is they see their kids, who is a younger version of themselves, being hurt, trying to build back up. They also get to see their parents, who an older version of them, struggling with aches and pain and not being able to do X, Y, and Z. So they're in this between where they're like, oh, shoot, like I could end up like my parents, right? So we always say, like, if you want to age better than your parents. So that's the one thing I took away from when it comes to like, hey, what do they want? Clearly, they want to have, health freedom, time freedom, right? And most of the time, they probably achieve some sort of financial freedom already. That's why they have the ability to invest in the kid stuff, right? So it starts with the character. Then from there, it goes deeper. That character needs to have a problem, right? What problem do they have? What is a one problem? So for us, simple. It's pain problem, right? So I always like to make the pain that's greater than 6 months. Because if it's greater than 6 months, is a pain. It's been a pain in the butt for that long. It hasn't gone away. Because if you were younger, you're like, oh, this thing will go away in 2 weeks.
Yep.
And then you're like, oh, it's on and off for 3 months. You're like, all right, it's fine. I can live with that. Now, if it's been going for 6 months, they're like, oh, snap. Is this like ever going to go away, or is it going to get worse? So start out pain that's been ongoing for 6 months, pain that change in function, right? So if you have back pain and you get up, you're like, I feel it. But now if you go to bend down and tie your shoes, you can do it. Now change in function. Now that's the external problem. So that's the problem. That, like, we're going to use back pain. Back pain lasts longer than 6 months. Change in function. They can't tie their shoes. Now we go deeper with that problem is, okay, now what is the external problem? So the external problem will be more physical, right? It's an 8 out of 10. It's really hard for them to drive down the shore during the summer. Like, they dreaded driving because they know getting in and out of the car is going to be a pain. They can't walk more than like 2 or 3 miles, right? So they can't take that stroll on the beach. They can't ride the bike, or they can't exercise, right? So now, not only they can't go to spin class, they can't go to Zumba, they can't go to CrossFit, or they can't play golf, right? Which is a huge time right now. So now, understand those external problems. How do they feel internally? What is their internal struggle? Because they can't do those things. So they're going to feel old, which is a real thing. They're going to feel left out. And the one thing we addressed was they're going to feel like they're missing out in the whole experience. So, like, the biggest thing for guys would be like, people stop inviting him on golf trip because this guy is not going to be able to keep up a walk 18.
Or they have to decline because they know they're not going to keep up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's
exactly.
not just,
right?
And I would say that's probably an even bigger issue, because it's not that they're not going to get invited. It's just that they're not going to want to go because they know they're not going to be able to play up to their standards, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. So that's an internal where they feel less than, and they feel like, man, I'm just declining fast, right? So that's an internal thing where at this point it starts eating into their confidence, who they are as a person, how they view themselves, how other people view them, and how their kids view them, right? So that's internal. And then the next one is philosophical, as in, what are they saying to themselves? So chances are they're going to say, I'm way too young to be dealing
Mm-hmm.
with this, right? Or, hey, this is the best one. It's like, well, this shouldn't happen to me. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
good person, right? No, or isn't fair, right? I worked so hard so I can have this nice summer. I planned all this trip, and now I can't even
Yep.
enjoy it, right? So philosophical would be something that you would put on like a billboard or on like a
Mm-hmm.
sign at like a sports stadium, right? You know that guy on Instagram, dude
Oh
with
yeah, yeah,
sign.
yeah,
Like his main thing is just
yeah.
a headline that people like. Oh,
Yep.
yeah, I get that.
Yep.
So so I'm like, okay, cool. So now that we have that down, so at least we know the character, we know what problem they're dealing with, how it's affect them externally, internally,
Mm-hmm.
philosophically, right? Then the next point is go, okay, now they have to meet the guy who understand their fear, which is
Yep.
us in healthcare,
Yep.
right? So where I used to get it wrong was I thought I was the main character, where really it's
Yeah.
the patient, right? So now understanding who they are, their problem, external, internal, philosophical, as a guide, how do I demonstrate
Yep.
empathy? So that's the first thing, right? So empathy is all about the soft skill stuff, right? Telling them like, hey, listen, I get it. It sucks. So I would say like, hey, like I injured my back working out. I couldn't work out for the next
Mm-hmm.
3 months. I know exactly what that feels like, especially when you're
Yep.
active. When you view yourself as an athlete, someone who likes to move, someone who likes to play catch with the kids, someone who wants to be able to drive around. And for female, it's like someone who seemed to be able to
Mm-hmm.
do it all, right? Because that's
Yep.
an identity. So with showing empathy, like, hey, I know
Yep.
what that's like. We know what's that like. We obviously work with people who are dealing with that all
Yep.
throughout, right? So that have to come with the message. Now with empathy, you need to demonstrate authority, which is again, this is where the brands
Yep.
stop coming in, right? The Google review, does it reflect that, right? Um, Obviously we have the book for ACL, so for the athletes that take care of it, right? So for us, we're looking to work with more, competitive adult. So we're working on content strictly that will help competitive adults stay
Yep.
active
Yep.
with pain, right? So right now, all we have is testimonial. We have a bunch of reviews. We have a bunch of like email sequences that I've been writing that we're going to stitch together and turn that into like
Mm-hmm.
a book or podcasts that
Yep.
we have, like interviewing other
Yep.
experts that give us
Yep.
authority. Um, so then from there, it's all going back to now give them a plan, aka a roadmap. Let's say now that you know what they're dealing with externally, internally, philosophically, they know that you can sympathize with them. You have the know-how, the knowledge, the expertise. How are you going to help them? Because everyone view their problem as
Yeah.
being unique, which is a
Yep.
huge thing, right? People think like only I
Mm-hmm.
have this back pain, only I have it this bad. So how do you come up across and say, hey, I know you have this bad. I know you're not be able to do this, but here's a roadmap of how we're going to help you,
Yep.
right? So for us, for the athlete, we like to use like, recovery, rebuild, and
Yep.
redefine, right? That's like a three things. But for the competitive adult, we're going to go with clarity, certainty,
Yeah.
confident, right? So first part of the roadmap is we're going to give
Yep.
you clarity. We want to tell you exactly why this is happening, what's causing it, right? Then we're going to give them
Mm-hmm.
certainty. Hey, because of this, we're going to address it with doing this kind of technique. We're going to do this exercise, etc. And confidence is going to be when we do this, you should be able to go back and do
Mm-hmm.
X, Y, and
Yeah.
Z,
Yep.
right? So we kind of map that whole thing out. Now, once you do that, the biggest thing, and dude, you're going to love this because call to action. Get them to
Yeah.
take action, right? Because how many times you review people landing pages or website and there's
Yep.
zero call to action, or the call to action is so
Yep.
soft, right? Hey, book a call, right? Schedule an appointment. Like all the one thing I've learned was consistent call to
Yes.
action. Don't say book a call, uh, book a
Mm-hmm.
discovery visit, get on the
Yeah.
schedule, book
Yeah.
an eval. Just do
Yeah.
one thing. Just get them to just
Yeah.
book a call. right? So that's been a whole thing for us. Like everything is just book a call,
Yeah.
book a call, book a call, book a call. Um, get them to take action.
You have
Um,
to you have to almost, because again, they're coming to you as a guide. So you have to
mhm,
tell them what the next step is and tell them what they need to do. You can't assume that they just know, oh, the next step is to book a call. No, you have to tell them and be explicit about that and tell them, hey, if you want to solve these issues, like, you understand that we can help, this is our process. The next step of the process is book a call. So what are you waiting for? Book
mhm,
a call. Like, you can't sit back and now, again, you don't necessarily have to be super aggressive, but you have to be very clear and very explicit in what the next step in that process
mhm.
is. And so you want to have a very clear call to action, and you want to use that consistently once they get to that point in the process.
Yeah, yeah. So I know you'll love that because I was like, yeah, like precise
Yeah,
call to action is the key. And then next, after you get them to call to action, then you have to demonstrate
yeah.
result, right? So this is where the testimonials coming in, the reviews coming in even
Social
more.
proof. Yeah.
Um, yeah. So you have to list out successful result when you take this
Yeah,
action,
and I think
right?
going back to your content, like, a really powerful thing, especially with video today, is showing other active adults that have been through the process and have achieved results. Like, having those Google reviews is great, but having like case studies and
Mm-hmm.
showcasing those patients that have achieved results that look like them, that act like them, that have the same, similar demographics, so to speak. They got kids, they're up there in age, but they're still active and competitive. Like, those are really powerful because, again, it tells a story. Like, it's not just words on a
Mm-hmm.
page, but it actually tells a story of someone so they can see themselves in that same situation.
Yeah. And here's what's powerful after you get them to take action is that you have to show them success result, right? But you have to be clear with those results, right? So for me, we would say, hey, decrease pain by
Yeah.
40%, right? Being able to walk, you know, 5 miles, no
Yeah.
pain, right? Being able to play tennis, being able to play pickleball, being able to go on a golf trip, right? Being able to like not second guess whether you can do
Yeah.
things
And,
or
and I
not,
think that's really important
right?
because, again, while the reduced pain by 40% is good, to them it's
Mm-hmm.
somewhat ambiguous. But by saying,
Exactly.
you'll be
Yeah.
able to play 2 hours of pickleball and be refreshed and be ready to go again tomorrow, you won't wake up in the morning with back pain. You won't be immobilized because of your pain or your discomfort. So, like, showing them
Yep.
specifics and what that actually looks like and means in words or phrases that they understand and can relate to, I think is critical because, again, we want to make this process and this explanation as crystal clear as possible. We don't want to leave any room for interpretation. And so the more specific you
Mm-hmm.
can be in describing those results and showing those results as it relates to them, I think the more effective your story is. Again, because they don't have to think about it. Like, you're giving everything to them, and you're
Yeah.
you're reducing the work that they have to do on their part.
Yeah. And then you also got to show them what's at stake if they don't
Yeah, I
take
think
action.
that's that. Yeah, I'm
Like
glad
what
you
is
went there because that's
that's
huge. Yeah,
huge.
yeah, because
Yeah, like if you don't take this action, what would your life? So you have to like you're at a crossroad, right? You have sunny on one side,
yeah,
rainy on the other side. You obviously most people want to just show the sunny. Here's what your
yep,
life could look like. But the reality is, if they don't take action, their life could get
yes,
worse,
yep,
right? And being able to say, hey, like the tragedy would be living with this and not knowing what's
yep,
going on. Like again, being able to not understand what's going to throw your
hmm,
back out, right? So that's going to get people
yep,
tentative, right? Not being able to, babysit
yep,
your grandkids.
yep,
That's
yep,
also huge, right? So I think some of the best patients we have are someone who just a new grandmother, right? Like early middle 50s, still very
hmm,
active, want to be very involved. But then again, they have to be able to get on the ground, play
yep,
with the grandkids, bathe the
yep,
grandkids, because those are activity that they did that 30,
yeah,
40 years ago. And things were
yep,
different back then, right? So like, the tragic result we always try to paint is just losing
yeah,
time, right? And then second guess yourself, losing
yep,
confidence, right? Missing out on the trip, missing out on key moments, right? Not being able to go to
yep,
Disney, all of that stuff. So that's a tragic result that you have to paint out. And then the last thing is absolutely huge is identify the transformation process, right? Once they go from the beginning all the way to the end, what are they
Mm-hmm.
going to become? Who are
Yep.
they going to be, right? So they'll be a more competitive version of themselves, right? They'll be considered a healthy parents, right? Our new tagline now is like, a healthy family needs healthy
Mm-hmm.
parents,
Yep.
right? And then let's get you back to the driver's seat, right? Now you're driving your
Yep.
family forward, right? That's a transformation that people want, right? I mean, you're a dad, so like, what would be a good identity for you if you were to go through this whole
Dude, you're
process?
you're describing me, man. I mean, you really are. It's like, you know, because I've got older kids that are now married, and so I've got grandkids that are probably not too many years away. But I've also got a 5 year old at home, so who keeps me active, and so I kind of don't have a choice. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but it's, I say competitive. I did CrossFit for 8 years. I played sports in high school and college. I've always been very active, and so I find myself definitely slowing down and in experiencing different aches and pains that seem to linger, and it
Mm-hmm.
definitely impedes my performance to a certain extent. Um, and so there's always those worries about, I'm going to be in my early 60s before my youngest finally gets out of the house. Who knows how many grandkids I'll have at that point? And so, my fear is that my goal and my objective is to always be able to show my kids and my grandkids, who's the boss, who's the man. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of my motivating factor. But I know that in that regard, I have to take, my longevity, and I have to be smarter about how I approach things. Uh, and
Mm-hmm.
so just I know a lot just because of my experience, everything that I've done, owning a CrossFit gym, being a CrossFit athlete, being a coach. I know a lot of those things, but there's still things that I just don't know, that I come to you for guidance and help. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably in, I don't want to say I'm unique, but most of the population doesn't have the experience that I have. And for them to be able
Mm-hmm.
to want to do those things, like, they absolutely need someone like you to help show them the way. But at the same time, there's a lot of trepidation because there is so much distrust in society today, especially in healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can demonstrate that you understand who I am, my objectives, the things that I'm going through, but then also you can paint a picture of what could potentially happen if I don't solve these issues. You're definitely going to have my attention, and it's going to cause me to, it's going to inspire me to dig deeper and really learn more about you guys and how you can help me. And as you do that, when you guys do all the things that you do, like, that just instills confidence in me to be able to come to you guys and know that you're going to be able to help me achieve my objectives, avoid the negative outcomes that I don't want, and just ultimately live a happier, healthier, more active life.
What about the fear, right? Sorry to
No,
put you on
that's
the
fine.
spot. What about the fear of like seeing what your parents didn't do? Like what, like by you looking at your parents, what scare you of like becoming like them?
So I will say my parents are both fairly active.
Mm-hmm.
My dad ran track cross country in college. In fact, he was at one point ranked like top 10 in the nation in the mile run
Wow.
in high school. He was training for the Olympics, but then blew out his knee. And so as a result, as much as he loved running, he hasn't been able to do it for the last 50 years just because of that knee
Mm-hmm.
pain, the experiences. And so, and my mom, fortunately, they both try to stay active, and
Mm-hmm.
I've done some things. I've kind of coached my mom, both my parents, on being active and whatnot. And so, fortunately for me, they've set a good example. But even still, like, I see where they're at today, and they're in relatively good shape. They're in their early 70s.
Mm-hmm.
But when I get to that point, like, I want to be even more than what they are. Like, I want to still maintain the
Mm-hmm.
same level of activity. I want to be able to do a lot of the things that I do now that they can't do. Or if they do, it's kind of a half version, so to speak. Uh, and
Mm-hmm.
so I definitely want to be more active and more physically fit than what they are. But I think even more important, I want to do that because again, I want to set an example for my kids. Like I want to show them that
Hmm.
as you age, as you get older, you don't have to give up all those actives, those activities, those sports, those things that you enjoy doing that require being physically fit, that require avoiding injury. Just because I've seen the value and the benefit that it's provided in my life. And so that's kind of my
Yeah.
goal in terms of my own physical health is I want to be more active than my parents, but I also want to set that example for my kids, which I think a lot of parents ultimately want to do. It might just be that they're so far behind, on where they need to be that they're almost afraid to get started because it almost seems like such an insurmountable task to get to where they really want to get to.
Yeah. Dude, all right, let me test this with you. I've been toying with this
Oh,
headline
all
and
right.
I want to get your perspective. What if the phrase say be the superhero that your kids thinks you are? Does that
I love
resonate
it,
with you?
man.
Is that
Yeah.
powerful?
Yeah. Because I know my kids definitely look up to me in that regard. And I always want to be that superhero. Like I always want to be that person that can
Mhm.
come in if needed and save them from that burning building, so to speak. Um, so yeah, man,
Okay.
I love it. I love it.
All right, perfect.
Yeah.
I'm gonna use
Yeah, roll with it, man.
it. So that's what we did in a nutshell. And it just dude, it was just so good. It's just a good thought exercise to be able to sit for like
Yeah.
4 hours just to like dial that down. And we like, I mean, for each section I went over, we probably came up with like 20
Hmm.
different things. And we just work it through to see which one's the most
Yeah.
powerful and which one's the most dialed in based on the population that we want to serve. And then from there, what's cool about that, now we have a map. So now my team and I, every time we decide any landing page, any
Yeah.
promotion, any email sequences, it's going to go based
Yeah.
on that.
And I think too,
Who is this
yeah,
for?
from like from a more tactical standpoint, and I'm not sure how, what you guys discussed about this, but like it's not you're not just dealing with active adults, like you're dealing with active high level athletes as well. And so it's almost
Mhm.
like you have you have to go through that exercise.
Twice.
Well, I would say at a brand level overall, like taking into
Mhm.
consideration all of your ideal patient populations, but then with those different populations going through that exercise as well, because again, it's going to form the way you create your landing pages, the type of follow up content that you create, the types of video content that you put out there, the emails, the text messages, the offers that you make. But getting really clear on that gives you that when you sit down, you have a purpose. Like you know what you're doing. Like you're not sitting down having to
Mhm.
start from scratch and say, well, oh, what do we do for this offer? Or what are we going to do for this campaign? Like
Mhm.
you already have that framework and that structure in place that then helps you accelerates that process to create all those things that you need in terms of landing pages and follow-up sequences and workflows and scripts with your team and all those different things that you do. And you can just simply anytime you need to create a new campaign or a new offer, you just go back to that framework that you've created for that particular segment of your population, and you're just pulling those things out based off of that. So, I mean, I know
Mhm.
4 hours. People are probably listening to this going, "Man, I don't have 4 hours." Like, but
Mhm.
those 4 hours that you spend up front are going to save you 400 hours on the back end in trying to come up with this stuff from scratch every time. And so it's one of those work on the business, not in the business tasks that I think people often
Yeah.
overlook and think they don't have time for. But in reality, there's really nothing more valuable as a business owner that you could do than sitting down and going through that exercise and getting clarity on those things.
Dude, listen, it's all about making time, right? People are like, I don't have time. Like
Yeah.
Saturday,
Yeah.
Sunday, right? Sunday afternoon, like just block it out and make it happen. Because if you don't do that, you, I, I also don't like that notion, like that I don't have time notion, like that rabbit from like
Yeah. Yeah.
Alice in Wonderland. Like you have to like, if you keep subscribing to that, you're always gonna believe. Even when you hire people, you're always gonna believe
Yep.
you don't have time,
Yep.
right? So if it's a priority, you got to make time.
Absolutely.
And if like for me, if I want like 4 kids, 5 kids like you, I can't subscribe to that
We can have a conversation
because
offline
the
about that. If that number's right.
exactly right, like yeah, because you can't you can't subscribe to that kind of thinking because I I mean I just went to lunch with breakfast with our friends this morning and I was telling like there's certain thought that I just don't want to subscribe to
Yeah.
because it's not going to serve
Yeah.
me in any
Yeah.
way. It's only going to harm me no matter
Yeah.
what. And one of them is like, yeah, I don't have time.
Yeah, we all have time. It's just how we prioritize that time.
Yeah.
In running a business, it's easy. It's that whole Stephen Covey matrix, where you've got the important, not important, not urgent, um, important or not urgent, important, like urgent, important, like whatever. I don't remember exact what layout of
Mhm.
that is, but like like we all have 24 hours in a day, and we just have to
Mhm.
prioritize based on where we want to get to. Like, what are we trying to accomplish and what are we trying to achieve? And then just work things around that. As a business owner, look, we get it. It's hard. Like, there's a lot of things that are calling
Yeah.
for your attention that may seem urgent and important in the moment. And maybe they are,
Mhm.
but maybe also some of those things, it's an opportunity to look at your kind of approach to how you manage your time in your business, and maybe
Mhm.
something that is urgent but important is something that someone else could really do. Like, do you really have to be the one doing that specific thing, or is that an opportunity to create a process, a system, a script, put somebody in there and alleviate that off your plate? And I think as a business owner, it's just that continuous exercise of just evaluating, what am I doing? Am I really working on the most important, the highest leverage activities? And as a business owner, like,
Mhm.
we should be spending the majority of our day working on those high leverage activities. And
Mhm.
in this case, while look, deal treating a patient, yes, is very important because that's what keeps the lights on. But
Yeah.
is are you better served treating a patient or training your team to effectively treat a patient and deliver the outcome that you want to create? Because if you can do that and you can have people in places, then it doesn't matter how many patients are coming in. Like, your schedule doesn't change because you have the people, the processes, the systems in place to be able to effectively treat those patients. And that goes for anything related to running that business. Um,
Yeah. I mean, just to touch on that, because people want to have immediate leverage, right, up front, but you can't have leverage if you don't have good process in
yes.
place. And I think the way to have really true leverage is you got to be able to have a reproducible outcome,
Yeah.
right? You always say, like, high end service, high
Yep.
end touch point,
Yeah.
right? If you can produce that high end touch point, you're not going to have a high end
Without
business.
you doing it, I think that's the key.
Exactly.
It goes back to
Hmm.
the four types of leverage that we've talked about before. From again, Dan Martell referenced this, but it's
Hmm.
capital, code, connections, and content. Like, those are the four types of
Hmm.
leverage. And as business owners, like, we want to create as much leverage in our business as we can, because that's what allows us to, you know, work from 9 to 5 and be able to take the weekends and the nights off, and not stress about your business growing. But to get to that point, you have to
Hmm.
have those things in place. You have to create that leverage in the business. And so, taking the time to go through this, prioritize, shuffling your day around, and again, if needed, nights and weekends, like, spend that time, but create that leverage in your business to give you the opportunity to be able to work on and focus on things like this.
Yeah. Awesome, dude. I mean, that's how we're gonna end it. That was a great podcast. Guys, like always, appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure you share with some like-minded individual. Because we try to grow together. And again, going back to call to action, book a call, and then let's get talking and help you grow your
Yep.
practice.
Badassclinicians.com. You can find us there, and whatever we can do to help you grow your business, grow that clinic, get you that time, freedom, and flexibility that you're looking for, we're here to help.
Exactly.